Handcuffs clinked as Commander Meyer Ellison, the Navy SEAL sniper with 3 silver stars, stood before a courtroom filled with whispers. The sight of a black woman in a SEAL uniform already made some uncomfortable. But today, those whispers carried venom. "Remove your cap," barked the bailiff. Maya did, her steady gaze fixed forward, her posture unshaken. Reporters' flashes exploded like gunfire. "That's her, the sniper who disobeyed orders," one hissed. "Or the woman who saved 20 Marines," another murmured. Her mother sat trembling in the gallery, clutching a Bible. The prosecution painted Meyer as a rogue, a disgrace, a symbol of undisciplined emotion. But the truth, the one no one dared to hear, was buried beneath classified reports. Then the judge's gavel slammed. "Commander Ellison, you stand accused of insubordination and unlawful engagement." A chill swept the room. Meyer's lips trembled for the first time. "With all due respect, sir," she said softly, "if I hadn't pulled that trigger, we'd be burying 100 Americans today." The audience gasped. The judge glared. "This isn't the battlefield, Commander. This is the law." And just when it seemed her career and reputation were over, the doors opened. Every soldier in the room stiffened. An admiral, medals gleaming, eyes blazing with purpose, stepped in. "Hold it," his voice thundered. "Before you condemn her, you will hear what really happened that day." The courtroom froze. And for the first time, Meyer's stoic eyes flickered with tears. The courtroom was as silent as a battlefield after the final shot. The American flag hung behind the judge's bench, unmoving in the still air. Rows of military officers filled the benches, their crisp uniforms gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Every camera was aimed forward, toward the woman standing tall in her Navy SEAL dress blues, wrists bound by silver handcuffs. Commander Meyer Ellison, decorated sniper, war hero, and the first black female SEAL in U.S. history, stood with the posture of someone who had spent her life earning respect that was never freely given. The whispers around her felt like invisible bullets ricocheting off her pride. "She's the one who ignored command," someone muttered. "Save lives doing it," another whispered. "Or cost the Navy millions," came a cynical reply. Maya didn't look at them. Her eyes were locked straight ahead, on the flag, the oath she'd sworn to protect. The prosecutor, Lieutenant Commander Pierce, rose with cold precision. His uniform was perfect, not a single crease out of place. His tone was sharper than steel. "Commander Ellison," he began, stepping forward, "you are charged with willful disobedience of a direct order during a live combat operation, resulting in the compromise of mission integrity. How do you plead?" Maya's defense lawyer, Captain Renee Lawson, placed a calming hand on her arm. "Not guilty, sir," Lawson said firmly. "Commander Ellison acted to save American lives." Pierce's lip curled. "By breaking the chain of command." "By honoring the spirit of it," Lawson shot back. "The mission's objective was to protect, not to count bodies." The judge, Colonel Hargrove, leaned forward. His eyes were tired, his voice grave. "We're not here to debate philosophy, Counselor. We're here to determine whether Commander Ellison's actions constituted insubordination." Maya finally spoke, her voice low but steady. "Permission to speak freely, sir." The judge nodded. "When the call came to hold fire," she said, her gaze unwavering, "I had 2 minutes to decide whether to obey an order or save a team pinned under enemy crossfire. I chose the latter." Pierce adjusted his papers with deliberate calm. "Commander, you were told to stand down for aerial support. Instead, you took the shot yourself. A classified target. Against orders." Her jaw tightened. "Sir, with respect, there was no time for air support. My men were dying. The enemy had RPGs aimed at their extraction route." Pierce took a step closer. "And who are you to override a direct command from Central Command?" For a moment, the question hung in the air like a challenge to her very identity. Meyer inhaled slowly, the faintest tremor in her voice. "I'm the one who had eyes on the target. The one who would have had to live with hearing my brothers die over the radio." The gallery stirred, the tension rippling through the crowd. Her mother, seated in the back row, clasped her hands so tightly the knuckles turned white. Lawson rose again. "Sir, my client has earned 3 silver stars, 2 bronze, and a Purple Heart. She's saved lives on every deployment she's been on. She made a split-second decision, the same kind that makes heroes, not criminals." Pierce counted swiftly. "Or reckless soldiers who believe they are above command." "Enough," the judge said, raising a hand. "We'll review the mission logs and after-action reports before judgment. Commander Ellison, Until then, you will remain in custody. The bailiff moved toward her, but Maya didn't flinch. Her mind drifted, just for a second, back to that night. The desert wind. The sound of her spotter's voice in her earpiece, ragged with fear. The screams over comms. The heat of the rifle barrel beneath her gloved fingers. Hold fire, command had ordered. But she could see the ambush forming, the enemy closing in. She remembered whispering to herself, not today. Then the trigger broke, the rifle roared, and silence followed, the kind that comes only after death and salvation share the same breath. Her eyes blinked back to the courtroom. The past evaporated, leaving only the hum of air conditioning and the weight of judgment. Pierce continued, pacing now. This isn't about bravery, it's about discipline. If every soldier decided their judgment outweighed command, the entire system collapses. Commander Ellison represents what happens when ego replaces order. Lawson stood again, voice cutting through the murmur. Ego didn't save 20 American lives that night. She did. The judge exhaled heavily. Both of you, enough grandstanding. We'll reconvene after review. He turned to Maya. Commander, anything further to say before I recess this hearing? Maya's voice softened, but it carried through the entire room. I've never disobeyed my country. I followed my oath, to protect life, even if it cost me my own. If that makes me guilty, then I accept whatever punishment you decide. A hush fell over the gallery. For the first time, the reporters stopped writing. Even Pierce hesitated, his eyes betraying a flicker of something, doubt, perhaps, or guilt. Then, just as the judge lifted his gavel to adjourn, the heavy wooden doors at the back of the courtroom swung open with a resounding crack. Every head turned. A tall figure in immaculate white uniform strode in, medals catching the light like fire. His presence alone commanded silence, an authority that eclipsed everyone in the room. The judge frowned. This is a closed hearing. Who are you, sir? The man removed his cap, revealing steel-gray hair and eyes like tempered glass. Admiral Jonathan Stone, he said. Director of Special Operations Command. Gasps rippled through the room. Pierce froze mid-step. Admiral, this is... Stone raised a hand. Save it. Before this court goes one step further, you're going to hear the truth about what really happened that night. He turned toward Maya, his expression softening. Commander Ellison, you've carried this burden long enough. The courtroom, moments ago alive with noise and judgment, fell utterly silent. Something powerful was about to unfold. The air in Kandahar was dry enough to cut through bone, and every breath tasted like dust and gunpowder. The night sky stretched endlessly above the desert, black velvet scattered with white stars, the kind that reminded Maya Ellison of home, of the Georgia nights she used to spend staring through her bedroom window, dreaming of a life where she could protect those who couldn't protect themselves. But the silence of the Afghan desert wasn't peace, it was anticipation. The kind that made your pulse sink with the distant hum of danger. Team Bravo, this is Falcon 1. Status check. Maya's voice was low and even through her comms. Falcon 1, Bravo here, replied Chief Petty Officer Daniels, her spotter and closest friend. We in position. We've got heat signatures, 5, maybe 6 hostiles, North Ridge, moving fast. Maya adjusted her sniper scope, the cold metal pressed against her cheek. Her heartbeat slowed, her breathing became shallow and rhythmic. Through the scope, the world shrank into a single circle, the village below, a cluster of mud brick buildings barely visible under the faint glow of the moon. Command said the village was clear, Daniels muttered. Yeah, Maya replied, eyes narrowing. Command also said we'd have backup 15 minutes ago. The team was stretched thin. Intelligence had reported a weapons cache in the area, but what they found instead was an ambush waiting to happen. Maya could feel it in her gut, the same instinct that had saved her life too many times to count. Listen, came the gruff voice of Lieutenant Harris through the radio. Hold your position. Do not engage until we confirm. Sir, she answered, her finger hovering near the trigger. They're closing in on Bravo team. If we don't. Hold position. Harris barked. You don't fire until I say so. The order echoed in her earpiece, heavy and final. Daniels cursed under his breath. They are walking straight into the kill zone. Maya didn't respond. She zoomed in, focusing on the shadows moving behind a low wall. Then she saw it, the unmistakable glint of an RPG launcher rising into position. Her pulse spiked. No, she thought. Not again. Her mind flashed back to another mission years ago, when she obeyed the order to hold fire and watched 3 of her brothers die in front of her. She swore she'd never let hesitation cost lives again. "Listen," Daniels whispered, "what do we do?" Her voice was calm, but her soul trembled. "We do what's right." She exhaled slowly, the world narrowing down to one breath, one shot. Her finger tightened on the trigger. Crack! The rifle thundered. The bullet cut through the air and struck its target. The man with the RPG crumpled before he could fire. For a split second, silence. Then chaos. Gunfire erupted from every direction. The ambush was live. Falcon 1 to Bravo. "You're clear to move. Move now." Maya shouted into her comms. Explosions ripped through the sand. Bullets whizzed overhead. She shifted, chambered another round, fired again. 1, 2, 3 enemies down. Her accuracy was mechanical, cold, perfect. Daniels yelled over the gunfire. "You just disobeyed a direct order, Ellison." "I saved your life, didn't I?" she shouted back. They ducked as a mortar hit a dune nearby, showering them in burning sand. The heat scorched her exposed skin, but she stayed steady. She could see Bravo team moving, scrambling to cover, one man dragging another with a bleeding leg. "Command to Falcon 1, stand down. You've compromised the op." Harris's voice was furious. Maya ignored it. "Bravo, evac route east. Go now." For 20 eternal minutes, she kept firing, repositioning, leading her team out of the ambush like a ghost in the dark. Every shot she took found its mark. Every decision she made saved a heartbeat that would have otherwise stopped. When it was finally over, the dawn crept over the horizon, red and gold bleeding into the sky. Smoke rose from the village like ghosts of the night's violence. Maya lowered her rifle, her hands trembling slightly for the first time. Daniels sat beside her, removing his helmet, his face streaked with dust and sweat. "You're insane," he said softly. "But damn, you're a hero." She gave a faint smile. "Tell that to command." He looked at her, eyes full of something like sorrow. "They'll hang you for this. You know that, right?" "I know," she whispered. "But at least I won't have to live with hearing your voice fade over the radio." For a long moment, neither spoke. The sun rose higher, casting the battlefield in a haunting glow. The rest of the team gathered below, battered but alive. 20 men who would go home to their families because one woman refused to follow a fatal order. Later, as the medevac helicopters lifted off, Maya stood beside Daniels watching the dust swirl around them. Over her radio, the voice of command crackled again, colder this time. "Commander Ellison, report to base. Effective immediately, you are relieved of field duty pending review." Daniels turned to her. "They can't be serious." "Oh, they are serious," she said quietly. "They always are when someone like me breaks their rules." He frowned. "Someone like you?" She looked at him with tired eyes. "A woman. A black woman. A sniper who's supposed to take orders, not make them." He didn't argue. He just nodded slowly, respect written across his face. As she walked toward the chopper, Maya glanced back one last time at the smoldering horizon. The echo of gunfire still lingered in the distance, a reminder of what she'd done, and what it would cost her. In that moment, she knew. The battle wasn't over. It was only changing form. The next one wouldn't be fought in the desert. It would be fought in a courtroom. The courtroom had never felt heavier. The air itself seemed to hold its breath as Admiral Jonathan Stone strode forward, his medals glinting under the harsh fluorescent lights. Every footstep echoed across the marble floor like a drumbeat of authority and revelation. Even the judge, known for his unshakable composure, seemed momentarily thrown off balance. Colonel Hargrove cleared his throat. "Admiral Stone, this is a restricted military tribunal. May I ask the purpose of your—" Stone raised a single hand, and the judge stopped mid-sentence. His voice carried the weight of command honed over 4 decades of service. "Permission to address the court, Your Honor. I come bearing classified testimony pertaining to this trial and to the actions of Commander Maya Ellison." Whispers rippled through the gallery like a current. Reporters sat forward, cameras flashing. Pierce, the prosecutor, stiffened. "Your Honor, I wasn't informed of any special clearance or—" Stone's steely gaze cut him off. "You weren't informed because you don't have the clearance, Lieutenant Commander." He turned to Maya, his tone softening for just a heartbeat. "Commander Ellison, at ease. You've carried this weight long enough." Maya blinked in surprise. For the first time in days, her posture loosened, just slightly, though her hands still trembled faintly in the cuffs. Colonel Hargrove nodded reluctantly. "Proceed, Admiral. The court will allow it." Stone stepped to the center of the room and laid a thick folder onto the prosecution table. The manila paper bore the red stamp of classified. His voice grew quiet, but it carried. "These are the mission logs from Operation Iron Shield, the same operation for which Commander Ellison stands accused. Until this morning, they were locked under top-secret authorization. I obtained clearance from the Joint Chiefs to present them today." Peace's eyes darted nervously. "Objection. That's highly irregular, Your Honor." "Overruled," the judge said. "If the Admiral has evidence that bears on this case, we will hear it." Stone flipped open the folder. The papers inside were stained, some marked with black redactions, others bearing signatures of people long retired. He lifted one page and began to read. Excerpt from After-Action Report, filed by Admiral Jonathan Stone, January 7, 2023. During the operation in Sector 9G, Commander Meyer Ellison's independent engagement neutralized an enemy force preparing to ambush U.S. forces. The decision, though technically against command order, resulted in the direct saving of 22 American lives, including members of SEAL Team Bravo and Marine Recon Unit Delta. The courtroom went dead silent. Pierce swallowed hard. That's impossible." The official report made no mention. "Because it was sealed," Stone interrupted, his gaze sharp. "Do you know why it was sealed, Lieutenant Commander?" "Because the truth embarrassed higher command. They didn't want the world knowing that a black woman, a sniper who had to fight for every ounce of respect, was the one who saved the mission they botched." Gasps rippled through the audience. Maya's mother pressed a hand to her heart, eyes glistening with tears. She mouthed a quiet prayer, her lips trembling. Pierce tried to recover his voice. "Sir, with all due respect, this doesn't change the fact that Commander Ellison defied a direct." Stone slammed his hand on the table, the sound echoing like a gunshot. "You want to talk about defiance? Then let's talk about leadership. About courage. About the moment when every second counts and orders come too late. I gave that order to hold fire, Lieutenant Commander. And I gave it because I believed our intel was accurate. I was wrong." A murmur swept across the gallery. Even the judge's eyes widened slightly. "You?" Pierce stammered. "You issued that command?" "Yes," Stone said, his voice trembling with memory. "And because of that, my own son, Lieutenant Mark Stone, and his unit were the ones pinned down in that kill zone. Commander Ellison ignored my order and saved my son's life." The room seemed to tilt. Even the sound of the cameras faded. All eyes turned to Maya, who stared at the Admiral in shock, her lips parting slightly. "I didn't know," she whispered. He nodded, emotion flickering across his hardened features. "You weren't supposed to. My son told me later, told me that if you hadn't pulled that trigger, he and every man with him would have died in that canyon. You made a decision no one else could make. And instead of being thanked, you were betrayed by the same system you swore to save." For a long, aching moment, no one spoke. Maya's eyes glistened, but she held her composure. "Sir, I never wanted recognition. I just couldn't let them die." Stone smiled faintly, the kind of smile that carried both pride and sorrow. "And that's why you deserve it." He turned back to the judge. "Your Honor, if Commander Ellison is guilty of anything, it's being a better officer than the men who doubted her. She acted with valor, saved American lives, and upheld the very oath this uniform represents." Pierce's face had gone pale. His composure cracked. This isn't procedure," he stammered. "We can't just—" Stone looked him dead in the eyes. "If she's guilty, then I should be in those cuffs beside her." The words hung in the air like a verdict all their own. For the first time since the trial began, the courtroom audience broke into murmurs of agreement, not of judgment, but of admiration. Colonel Hargrove leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. He studied Maya, then the Admiral, then the folder that now glowed under the camera flashes like a symbol of truth unburied. The judge's voice, when it came, was softer than before. "Admiral Stone, your testimony will be entered into the official record. This court owes you, and Commander Ellison, the full weight of justice." Stone nodded once. "Justice, sir, is all I came for." As he turned to leave the stand, his eyes met Maya's again, not as superior to subordinate, but as one soldier to another. Respect, equality, gratitude. And for the first time since her arrest, Commander Meyer Ellison allowed herself a breath of hope. The courtroom remained suspended in that uneasy quiet after Admiral Stone's testimony. The truth had cracked the walls of procedure, but the outcome was still uncertain. The judge sat unmoving, fingers steepled beneath his chin. The press leaned forward, pens hovering above their pads, and the air smelled faintly of tension and old varnish. Then Colonel Hargrove spoke. "Commander Ellison, before we proceed to deliberation, this court will allow you the opportunity to speak on your own behalf." For a moment, Maya didn't move. The silence was almost comforting after weeks of being spoken about rather than to. Captain Lawson touched her wrist gently. "This is your moment, Maya," she whispered. "Tell them who you are, not what they wrote in their reports." Maya rose slowly. The handcuffs clinked as she straightened, the sound echoing louder than it should have. She looked out at the sea of uniforms, cameras, and strangers. Then her eyes landed on her mother, sitting small and trembling in the back row, her Bible clutched like a lifeline. "Thank you, Your Honor," Maya began, her voice low but clear. "I've spent most of my life speaking with bullets and silence. I was trained to listen more than I talked, because on the battlefield, noise can get you killed. But maybe silence can, too." A ripple of unease passed through the room. She took a deep breath. "When I joined the Navy SEALs, I was told I'd never make it through Hell Week. They told me I was too small, too quiet, too different. Every time I passed a test, someone said I must have been given a break. Every time I got promoted, someone whispered it was for diversity optics. And every time I proved them wrong, they moved the goalpost just a little further." Her voice quivered, not from fear, but from the strain of holding back years of buried exhaustion. "I learned to shoot straighter, run faster, endure longer. I learned to sleep with one eye open because sometimes the enemy wasn't across the desert, it was standing right next to me, wearing the same flag on their sleeve." A murmur swept across the room. The judge didn't interrupt. Maya's gaze drifted toward the prosecutor's table, but her words weren't aimed at Pierce anymore, they were aimed at everyone who had ever doubted her. "I didn't become a SEAL to prove anything to anyone. I joined because my father was a Marine who never made it home, and my mother raised me on the belief that service was the highest form of love. I wanted to be part of something bigger, to protect the kind of country he believed in. But sometimes," her voice cracked slightly, "it feels like that country never believed in me." She paused. Even the cameras seemed to still. "When I took the shot that day," she continued, "I wasn't thinking about politics or orders or headlines. I was thinking about the men screaming in my headset, brothers who trusted me, who counted on me to see what they couldn't. I disobeyed a command, yes, but I obeyed my conscience." Her lawyer, Captain Lawson, stepped forward softly. "Maya, why didn't you say all this before? Why hold back until now?" Maya turned her head toward her. "Because people like me don't get the luxury of mistakes, Captain. Every time I speak, it's a risk. Every time I stand up for myself, I'm labeled emotional, unstable, insubordinate. So I learned to stay silent." Her eyes glistened as she faced the judge again. "But silence doesn't keep you safe. It just lets injustice breathe longer." She hesitated, remembering. "I lost teammates out there, men I loved like family. And when I came home, I lost something else, faith that the system I fought for would ever fight for me. But I'm standing here today because I refuse to let their memory be twisted into an accusation." Her mother's sob echoed faintly from a gallery. Maya's jaw tightened, but she smiled through it. "I know what the record says. I know how it looks. A black woman in a uniform she wasn't supposed to earn, taking a shot she wasn't supposed to take. But I didn't do it to prove I was better. I did it because I am a SEAL, because we protect life, even when it costs us everything." She took a breath, steadying herself. "I've been called a hero and a disgrace in the same sentence. But the truth doesn't care about names. It just waits for someone brave enough to speak it." For the first time, she looked directly at the judge, her voice rising with conviction. "I didn't break the Navy's code. I followed it. I didn't betray my country. I defended it against enemies seen and unseen. And I didn't disobey my oath." Her voice softened to a trembling whisper that carried through every corner of the courtroom. "I protected it." The words landed like a wave. No one moved. No one breathed. Even Pierce, the prosecutor, sat frozen, his pen idle. The cameras captured her standing tall, the light catching the moisture in her eyes, transforming them into something unbreakable. Her lawyer exhaled quietly, pride glimmering in her gaze. Well said, Commander, she murmured. Maya nodded slightly, then faced the judge again. Your Honor, she said softly, if doing the right thing means being found guilty, then I'll wear that label the same way I wear my scars, with honor. Colonel Hargrove didn't answer immediately. His eyes lingered on her, weighing not just the words, but the heart behind them. Around him, soldiers, journalists, and civilians alike sat in silent awe. When Maya finally sat down, the echo of her voice lingered, not just in the courtroom, but in every person who had ever known what it meant to fight for dignity. And for the first time since her arrest, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Not victory, not relief. Freedom. The courtroom sat in a suffocating silence. Even the air felt heavy, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Judge Harmon's gavel rested motionless, her eyes fixed on the documents before her. Every tick of the clock echoed like a drumbeat against Maya's heart. She sat still, her wrists still bound by cold steel cuffs, her posture unshaken but her spirit trembling deep inside. Reporters whispered softly from the gallery, pens poised but frozen mid-E. Maya's mother, Lorraine, sat behind her, hands clasped tightly in prayer. Her lips quivered, eyes red from tears that refused to stop. The woman who'd raised a warrior now sat powerless in a battle her daughter couldn't fight with bullets, only with truth. Lieutenant Commander Maya Reynolds, Judge Harmon finally began, her voice slicing through the tension. This court has heard evidence both damning and compelling. You stand accused of insubordination and unauthorized engagement resulting in the deaths of civilians during Operation Neptune's Veil. Maya swallowed hard. Her hands trembled slightly on her lap. She thought of her team, men she'd saved, the innocent lives she tried to protect, and the one decision that turned her into the accused instead of the hero she once was. Your Honor, the prosecutor interjected nervously, shuffling papers, we have reason to believe that. But he stopped. The double doors at the back of the courtroom opened with a low groan. Every head turned. A Marine guard stepped forward and handed a sealed envelope to the court clerk, murmuring something that made the clerk's eyes widen. He passed the message to Judge Harmon, who frowned and broke the seal. The Pentagon's insignia gleamed faintly in the light. The courtroom held its breath again. Judge Harmon's expression shifted as she scanned the contents, first confusion, then disbelief, then shock. Ladies and gentlemen, she said finally, we have just received new evidence, marked classified until this moment, authorized for release by the Department of Defense. The prosecutor's jaw dropped. Maya's heart pounded so hard she could barely breathe. Judge Harmon continued, her tone firm, her eyes locked on Maya. The Pentagon confirms that Lieutenant Commander Reynolds' actions on the night in question directly prevented the detonation of a stolen warhead. Her deviation from orders saved over 300 civilian lives and the lives of her own SEAL unit. Furthermore, the civilian casualties previously reported were enemy combatants disguised as aid workers. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Reporters sprang to their feet. Flashbulbs burst in a frenzy. What is this? The prosecutor stammered. That information was classified. Until now, the Admiral interrupted from the witness stand, his voice deep and commanding. I authorized her mission. She acted under direct covert orders. I couldn't reveal it before because it was Black Ops clearance, but after what I saw in this courtroom, he looked at Maya, his eyes heavy with pride and regret. I couldn't stay silent another second. The prosecutor's hands shook as he fumbled with his papers. Then, we withdraw all charges. Maya sat frozen, her mind struggling to grasp what was happening. It felt unreal. The chains around her wrists suddenly felt lighter, even before the bailiff moved to unlock them. When the click of the cuffs finally came, she didn't move at first. She just stared at her trembling hands. Free at last, the Admiral stood, squared his shoulders, and turned to face her. Slowly, deliberately, he raised his hand in salute. Lieutenant Commander Reynolds, he said, his voice carrying through the stunned silence. On behalf of the United States Navy and every soul you saved that night, thank you. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Judge Harmon stood as well. One by one, the spectators in the gallery rose to their feet. The room filled with the sound of applause, soft at first, then thunderous. Some people cried openly. Even the prosecutor bowed his head. Maya blinked rapidly, her throat tight with emotion. Her mother's sobs turned into laughter as she rushed forward, throwing her arms around her daughter. My baby, she whispered, voice trembling with joy. I knew they couldn't break you. I knew the truth would come. Maya held her mother close, tears streaming down her face. I wasn't sure, Mom, she choked out. I tried to stay strong, but... Her mother smiled through tears. You were born strong. As cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions, Maya turned toward the Admiral. Sir, she said softly, thank you for standing up when no one else would. He gave a faint smile. You stood up first. I just followed your lead. Maya nodded, overwhelmed, her eyes glistening. For the first time in months, she could finally breathe. As she walked out of the courtroom, sunlight spilled through the high windows, painting her face in gold. It felt symbolic, light after darkness, truth after injustice. Behind her, the whispers of admiration followed. She wasn't just the black female SEAL sniper on trial. She was the hero who'd refused to break even when the world turned against her. And now, the world was finally seeing her for who she truly was. The sun hung low on the horizon, spilling amber light across the rolling green hills of Arlington National Cemetery. Rows of white marble markers stretched endlessly, glinting in the gentle breeze. Maya Reynolds stood silently among them, her dress uniform crisp, her medals glinting faintly beneath the fading light. In her gloved hands, she held a single folded flag, the one she'd been given after her SEAL team's final mission. The world knew her now as Lieutenant Commander Maya Reynolds, the sniper who saved 300 lives. But she didn't think of herself as a hero. Not here, not among the names etched in stone of those who'd never come home. She kneeled by a grave marked simply, Lieutenant Marcus Hawk Daniels. Brother, soldier, friend. Her throat tightened as she placed the flag on the cool marble. Hey, Hawk, she whispered, her voice trembling. We did it. They finally know the truth. She paused, brushing a tear from her cheek. You told me once that justice doesn't wear medals, it wears scars. You were right. I didn't fight for glory, I fought to honor what we stood for. The breeze shifted, carrying the faint rustle of leaves, almost as if the world was listening. Behind her, soft footsteps approached. You always did talk to ghosts, came a deep, familiar voice. Maya turned to see Admiral Richardson standing a few paces away, his white uniform gleaming in the sunset. Old habits die hard, sir, she said, managing a small smile. He nodded, folding his hands behind his back. They are honoring you next week, full reinstatement, Medal of Valor, the highest commendation we can give. Maya looked back at the rows of graves. They deserve it more than I do. The Admiral's eyes softened. They'd say the same thing about you. He took a slow breath. You know, I've been in this uniform for 40 years. I've seen heroes come and go. But what you did in that courtroom, standing tall when the world wanted to tear you down, that took more courage than anything I've ever seen on the battlefield. Maya blinked back tears, unable to speak. As the Admiral turned to leave, he paused. There's one more thing, he said. A group of young cadets from Annapolis requested that you be their keynote speaker for next month's induction. They said they wanted to hear from the woman who redefined what it means to survive. Her lips parted in surprise. Me. He chuckled. You inspired an entire generation, Commander. Don't underestimate the power of your story. That night, under a sky full of stars, Maya stood before a mirror in her small apartment, her reflection steady and strong. She touched the medal on her chest, not as a symbol of pride, but of perseverance. The nightmares were quieter now, the shame replaced by peace. When the day of the ceremony arrived, the auditorium overflowed with faces, sailors, Marines, civilians, journalists, all waiting for the woman who'd turned a trial into a testament of truth. Her mother, Lorraine, sat in the front row, beaming through tears. The Admiral stood beside her, hands clasped proudly. When Maya walked onto the stage, the crowd erupted in applause. But she didn't wave or bow. She simply stood tall, saluted the flag, and let the silence settle before speaking. I was once told that justice wears scars, not medals, she began softly. For a long time, I believed my scars were a sign of failure. But I've learned they are proof that I survived, and that truth survived with me. The audience was motionless, every word hanging heavy with meaning. I was judged not for what I did, but for who they thought I was. And yet, when the truth came out, it wasn't just my name that was cleared. It was the idea that integrity still matters, even when the world doubts you. Her voice wavered as she looked toward her mother. Justice isn't about punishment. It's about courage, the courage to keep standing, even when the world tries to break you. The hall filled with quiet sniffles. Maya smiled faintly and took a deep breath. So to every young woman, every soldier, every person who's ever been told they're not enough, remember this: you don't have to fit the mold to make history. You just have to refuse to break. As she stepped back from the podium, hundreds of hands lifted in salute. Among them were young girls in cadet uniforms, their eyes wide with admiration. One of them whispered to her friend, "That's her, the sniper who never gave up." Maya felt her chest tighten with emotion. She returned the salute, tears glistening in her eyes. After the ceremony, she walked out into the open courtyard where the evening sun painted everything gold. Her mother wrapped an arm around her shoulder, and for a long moment, they just stood there, silent, strong, together. Lorraine looked up at her daughter and smiled. "You did it, baby. You turned pain into purpose." Maya exhaled deeply, watching a group of cadets march past in formation. "No, Mom," she said softly, her voice filled with peace. "We did it." The Admiral approached, offering one last salute. "The Navy's proud of you, Commander. You remind us what honor really looks like." As they walked toward the gates, the golden light framed her silhouette, the once handcuffed sniper now walking free, shoulders square, eyes forward. The world had tried to chain her name to shame. But in breaking those chains, she became something greater. They tried to break her spirit with chains, but in doing so, they forged an unshakable legend.